Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Modern Market. This is our daily show from Monday to Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern Time, 12 p.m. GMT, every day of the week, where we discuss all things to do with the modern market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, and how to make money by leveraging the internet and the latest technologies. I'm your host, B-Check. I'm joined by my legendary co-host, Legendary, and we are here to discuss the fascinating, the wonderful NFT crypto market, the meme coin market, a lot of exciting things taking place over the weekend we want to get into. But before we do get there, just as a reminder, friends, nothing that any of us say here is financial advice. This modern market is very risky, feeling like it's getting riskier as well as people are taking more risks. No one really knows anything for sure. Please do proceed with caution and exercise your own judgment. With that out of the way, Legendary, how are you doing this Monday, the 13th of November?
GM, had a very productive weekend, did a bit of portfolio cleanup, restructuring, found projects that I didn't have any inkling that I still had them in my wallet, found token claims associated with them that I completely forgotten about. So that felt good to do that cleaning up. Still way too many JPEGs though. The portfolio allocation is still too JPEG heavy for the time being. But
Man,
it
I've
does
seen
feel good to free
I've
that up.
seen your wallets every now and again, and I have often thought, man, you've got a lot of NFTs, like a lot. Do you want to head like? Do you know how many you have?
Too many?
But as
Like,
in, is it potentially in the? Is it 1,000 plus?
yeah, definitely. I
Yeah,
think
because
it's
you
close
have
to
the
2K or
gaming style
something.
ones as well, right?
Yeah.
See,
It's
I thought so. I thought so. Um, yeah, that's fascinating. So, I
plus then I
mean,
also found a wallet that I have completely forgotten about, where apparently I did buy some Reddit avatars, like that season one, and I traded them. And I just thought that I kept ETH and USDC in there. But apparently the DJ in me at one point in time started buying NFTs on that wallet as well. Mostly, I told you about Treeverse timeless characters. And I just had no idea that I've been buying them on that wallet as well. I just discovered by coincidence on the weekend.
that's so funny. So you had no idea that. I mean, that's kind of fun. It is fun to discover new wallets with things which you didn't know were there. So maybe that's a positive, right?
Yeah, definitely is. Other than that, I did have a look into numbers around our show.
Mm-hmm.
Now we started this show in May, so we've been doing this for what, like a bit more than half a year, right?
August, September. Yeah, I guess so. Something like that.
Looked at the average number of listeners over the last 3 weeks. If you include replays, it's the first time since we've been doing the show that the 3 week average has crossed 300 people tuning in into the modern market.
Wow. Okay. And that's up by how much do you think? Maybe, not necessarily using the numbers, but
I
just
mean, remember
from
when
the
we
sense.
started? We started with what? With 20 people listening in, maybe 10 replays. We had like
Mhm.
30, 40 people doing that.
Yeah.
It's not 100x like the title of the show, but it's a 10x.
Yeah. I think the reason why I ask is because I would love for it to be true that the chart of the listeners and the number of people tuned in, like, equals the Solana chart or something, or equals the ETH chart. So maybe something more reasonable. I would just love that to be true. So I'd love to chart it and see to what extent that demand that we feel and that increase that we feel basically gets automatically translated into the market. Like, I would just love for that to be true. It feels like that to some extent, but I'd love to kind of dig into it a bit more.
I think we would need more data for that. Like if that would be something interesting to look across multiple spaces. Because you would have like still events like the Azuki Elementalism, the season 3 D-Gods fuck up that did bring a lot of people into singular spaces.
Yeah.
Then we had the daylight savings chaos like 2 weeks ago. So there's like a lot of noise in a singular space going on. So, but that would be something to look at like the top 10 daily shows and see how that correlates with interest in the market.
Yeah, I'd love to see that. One question I want to ask you specifically on your cleanup and how you think about cleaning up also why you think about cleaning up. I assume you're cleaning up the portfolio to readjust, reallocate because you feel that this is an important time. Want to ask you a question on that, on to what your reasons are and the types of decisions you're making. And then we're going to get into a discussion on how to hold on to 100x. There was a cool tweet by OSF who he put out, like, how are you supposed to do it? Like, what's the best way? And then there's a bunch of funny comments and interesting comments underneath. And I thought, again, we had this conversation last week about how to make generational wealth and keep it. In keeping with that type of thing, these are the types of things that people that's on people's minds. People are wondering, like, okay, well, if we are in this bullish cycle and these things are going to move in the way that we're expecting them to go, like, how do we not mess it up? How do we not drop the ball? And so, yeah, we're going to go through a little bit of that in a second. But just before we do that, and then as always, guys, we're going to do the headlines and all the other good news that you need to get up to speed with in the last over the weekend. But before we do that, as always, please do help us out by clicking the comment button in the right hand corner where you can retweet the spaces so we can get more people in here. And as always, if you want to follow along, you can do so by checking out the snapshot. It's pinned up top. It has the information I'm about to share. So please do like it if you find it brings you some value today. So let's get into it, starting with the price action. We have crypto fairly flat, actually, in the last 24 hours at least. Bitcoin at 37K, ETH at 2K, Solana at 59, down a couple of percent, Ape at 1.5. NFT volume in total is sounding quite good, but just down on some of the highs from last week. At total at 15.6 million, Blur at 9.7, OpenSea at 3.2. One thing to note is that doesn't include the Flooring Lab Capital wallets yet, so I need to figure out a way to incorporate that well. Getting into the headlines, there was a 20x for the Sofa Maker NFT minters who minted for 0.011 ETH, and that runs up to a 0.2 ETH floor right now. Want to touch on what's going on there. Probably need to try to figure it out. Next, BTC fund holdings hit all-time high this year with $1 billion of inflows. Probably not surprising with the ETF anticipation. And next, we have Orkan Art releasing the Maraca collection for a 0.5 ETH floor, a 0.5 ETH mint, and it instantly rises to a 4 ETH floor. I think it's actually closer to 6 ETH now. Huge win for those collectors. Very good list of collectors as well. And want to explain how I knew about that before, although I didn't get in, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Getting into the floor prices, we have CryptoPunks at 59.7, Bored Apes at 31.2, Mutants at 5.8, DeGods at 3.3, Captains up 4% at 4.1, Azukis up 2% at 6.2, Penguins at 5.3, Moonbirds at 2.1, and Nouns flat at 24 ETH. We have some notable sales, which are Ripcash. This is a secondary sale. Glitch selling for 27.2 ETH. That's $55,000. And we have the CryptoPunk police hat, which is one of the ones I flipped not so long ago, selling for 88 ETH legendary. That's $181,000. I think I may have just left about $100,000 on the table. Not to worry, though. It's not like that was something that was important. That's it. That's the headlines for me. Those are the numbers, legendary. What do you think of them?
The number that stands out is your not so subtle flexing, calling 100K that you leave on the table as not that important. I do love that. That's the most bullish thing I've heard in a while.
Well, this was real sarcasm. This was sarcasm.
Yeah. No, I ignore the sarcasm. I take it at face value because I like it more. It will, I do the clips this week, right?
Yeah.
Just for the people in the audience, we're still experimenting with clips using different tools. And we just said we're going to go on a weekly basis. B takes on a week, then I take on a week. And I do know what the clip of today is going to be already. And that's 14 minutes into the show.
Well, that's good. That's good. You know why it's good? Because it means you won't have to wait until the end of the day to do it, because you'll be able to do it sooner, which means I can get my retweet done quicker and then I know it's off the table. That's why it's good. That's going to happen, right?
Maybe. Maybe not. We'll see. We'll see.
Okay. Very good. Very, very good. Apart from the clip, we won't need to talk about that much more. Let's get into the show. So two key questions in this first part of the show to do with portfolio allocation, I guess, and trying to not fumble the bag. You mentioned that you have been doing some readjusting over the weekend. My first question is, why have you been doing that readjusting, and what's your thought process for the readjusting at the moment?
The trigger was definitely the call that I had with Moritz, who's a good friend of mine, and we talk like quite frequently on Friday.
And for the people who don't
And
know, Moritz is like, I don't actually know him for a long period of time, but more recently I've recognized him to be like a very good trader. Is that
yeah,
fair? Yeah.
yeah, definitely. And we were talking about like how we hold on to certain JPEGs for just the emotional sentimental value. And he was like, there's no point in doing that. Like you can either observe your JPEG trending to zero, or you could just sell it, take whatever loss you've incurred with that, put it in a high risk bet, even whether that's a shitcoin, a gaming project, whatever, put it in there. And Moritz was like, he'd rather lose all the money in that bet than watching a JPEG he just holds for emotional value going to zero or just trending down. And I thought a long time about that, because it kind of did show me something. The one thing that makes NFTs kind of special often is like the community, but community is often also a double-edged sword, in the sense of it makes you hold on longer to things that you wouldn't hold on for rational reasons other than, but the community is so nice.
Sure.
And I never had that separation, right? I buy art, I collect JPEGs, I invest projects I like, I trade stuff, but I've never not even had like that mental separation of putting things that I like and that I just collect for the sole reason because I enjoy and I want to have them. I don't look at them as a potential investment in a separate wallet to things that I just see as trading stock, as trading, as capital that I want to play with and I want to flip. And that was a learning to me, that I want to have that like wallet based separation, because it helps with the mental separation. And then again, I'm like, there's so many things that I want to get into right now in terms of like either token plays, gaming plays, a couple of private rounds that I wanted to do where I just don't have the liquidity right now. And I was like, okay, what NFT do I sell? Because like my allocation is still very, very high in NFTs. I'm like, nah, I don't want to sell that because I had a good time there. And I don't want to sell it because and I'm like, okay, but like realistically speaking, I need like 20 ETH right now. And if I say no to everything that I want to sell for whatever reason, then I'm not going to get that 20 ETH. I'm going to watch some ops that I wanted to participate in, no matter if they turn out to be good plays or not. They just won't have the chance to do that. That plus then that I'm watching a couple of collections where I saw a couple, in my opinion, underpriced NFTs at floor. I'm like, I would need to buy those immediately and just didn't have the liquidity. Kind of showed me it is time to act this weekend and take that seriously and just clean up.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And that speaks to one of the points we spoke about last time about just having capital available when you need it. And I guess when you're overextended, you don't have that possibility. One of the points you mentioned, I wanted to draw out, you said something about having separate wallets for separate things. Like, what did you mean by that? What's the thinking there? And then I wanted to talk about like making lists, because that's something I've been doing over the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I did not mean by that is, the security side of things, how you have your vault, you have trading wallets where you move things from your vault that you then want to list. Didn't mean the OPSEC part of it, but more so the thing that I have a vault for things I want to keep in a vault and not trade, like art that I just want to collect for the sake of it. And then I have other wallets where I just put NFTs in that I do want to trade, and I just have them separate from that wallet, because I think it helps me with my like mental separation, so that I don't look at a wallet and see things that make me like sentimental and make me like, oh, this is an art piece and I'm never going to sell, next to something that I should be selling. So I just move that to a separate wallet and get it out of my eyesight, and then I know this wallet is just stuff that's there to be traded, no matter the story behind it. It makes it easier for me to do that.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. It's important. I think it is correct. And ultimately, everyone needs to come up with their own strategy for what types of wallets they want to have. And this, again, this is separate to the security side of things. This is more just to do like, okay, well, this wallet is for shitcoins, and this wallet is for NFTs, and this wallet is for providing liquidity on Uniswap. Like, do you know what I mean? I actually do a bunch of stuff now where it's like, okay, well, this is my NFT lending wallet, and all the loans will go from there. But then maybe if I do something more risky with a protocol, then I'm not actually certain about that one, I'll be like, do you know what? Maybe I need to spin up a different one for this because I haven't really done this type of thing before. So maybe I'm going to use a different wallet for that. So yeah, wallets by function are actually quite interesting to me. I like that idea of separating things out. And then you mentioned the other thing that I've been doing, which I wanted to ask you first, and then I'll talk about it. And then we're going to get onto this tweet by OSF talking about how on earth to hold on to 100x. And I think we probably both have some experience on that as well. So that'll be fun. As you talked about, you are eyeing up certain collections right now. What's your process for making that decision making? Like, is it pure upside? Is it particular sectors? What's your thinking?
It's definitely multiple aspects. One of which is pure upside. Like, if I don't know, I wanted to look at take gaming, take the battle of layer 2s, Arbitrum versus Ronin, for example, and you now have, say, you want to also bet on Ronin because you think they will stand a chance in that battle for games to onboard on layer 2 solutions, then I'd rather not directly buy the Ronin token, but I'd rather have a look at what are some hyped or some highly anticipated projects that are to launch on Ronin, and rather go for those than the blockchain play directly, because I think in the short term, and that was the case with Pixels, which launched on Ronin, is potentially more profitable, but also more risky play, of course. So one thing is definitely that topical separation. And for me, the focus right now, as you know, is the gaming sector. And on the other hand, it is, when it comes to projects, like, what is the next milestone of the project where I potentially could see the trade happening? Like, am I waiting for them to drop a token? Do I know that a token generation event, a TGE, is coming? What's the timeline of that, and how might the snapshots look like? Am I more bullish on the token per se, like the case with CTX, or am I more, like, quote unquote, bullish on the announcement around the token, so they actually want to get out before the snapshot because I don't think that the token's going to do well? So, like, have a solid investment strategy that also knows what you're looking forward to in terms of deliverables from the project that constitute an exit point for you, and then also stick to that.
Yeah, I like that thinking. One of the questions I have for you is, because I think a lot of people will be in my position, which is, well, I mean, we're all in different positions, but on some level, everyone, if you're in this ecosystem right now and you're unfamiliar with the concept of Web3 gaming or the hype around it right now, you're probably not participating super heavily. I suspect everyone knows that to be true. And yet there are clearly people who are less inclined to go in that direction, right? This space is broad. There are different types of collectors. There are different types of traders. There are people with different interests. I'm someone who is heavily tempted by the gaming ecosystem. I'm tempted because I am aware of its potential without being a super participant myself. And as you know, and as the people are here probably know much more, I'm far more interested in the NFT lending stuff. I'm far more interested in the art side of things. And there are just as many opportunities from that perspective, right? Like, one of the headlines today is this Orkan mint, the Maraca collection, where there was 111. They minted out for 0.5 for select people. You could have been in the snapshot if you were holding the right NFT, and those went to 5 ETH immediately. So, like, there are certainly opportunities on different sides, but what do you think about the idea of, like, staying in your lane, Legendary? Like, if you and your friends are into gaming the most, is that the lane that you're going to stay in? And should someone like me be saying to you, oh, by the way, just tell me what you're doing, so I know your focus, so just tell me and then I'll do the same thing?
Yeah. Focus is king, definitely. Like, it just, I completely missed the Grok play, the meme coin named after Elon. Say, I completely missed it. No point in trying to chase that right now. I do think, and that goes back to the discussion that we had on Friday on the space, where we looked at, I think it was Loopify saying the most important thing to prepare for a bull market and be successful is to have like a group of friends with similar conviction, dedication to you. And this is something that we've also now been doing more and more in the background. That I share with you what I find interesting in gaming right now. You do the same with ArtPlace. And I do think that this is the way to go. You need to specialize in something. And then you also even need to figure out across how many sectors can you realistically afford to participate from a capital perspective in a meaningful way. Because if you're already, like, it depends, and it's something we spoke about on Friday where Kusho had that very good contribution. It depends where you are on your journey. Like if you're starting out and you have, I don't know, a couple $100 to play around with, might not be the best to try to cover NFT lending, the art sector, gaming, etc. Realistically speaking, you have to kind of like the equivalent of being a small stack on a poker table. You have to do a couple all-ins, right? You have to double up, triple up that stack a couple of times to be able to play a bit more diversified. So that also depends where you are. But my thing would be stay in your lane, because even in gaming, it's so hard to keep up. I think it's the same in art for you now that there's more and more opportunities coming up. But do find some friends to talk about that and exchange. I don't know, call it alpha if you want to call it alpha, financial advice if you want to call it financial advice, but you know what I mean. Just talk about the things that interest you.
Yeah, I really want to get to Jack in just a second because I know we'll have some good takes on this as well. My final thought on that is that I really like that you brought up this friend group thing, whatever you want to call it, group chat, voice chat, Telegram group. And I would love to be able to tell people, and this is, I don't want to be disingenuous with people when on the one hand you say like, look, you got to specialize, you got to stay in your lane. But at the same time, I believe it to be true that like if you have a group of people who you trust and you've kind of got this historical record with, like, the reality is if you tell me something and I adjust it for like my risk profile, I'll probably do it without looking. That's just the reality. So I just don't want to be disingenuous with the audience in the sense that
it goes the same the other way around. The last thing you told me to buy Artwise, I'm gonna name it publicly, but I instantly did buy it. And this is the hardest part, to establish that level of trust with those people, but to also know that not everything, like not every play that I'm going to tell you is going to turn out to do as well as I want it, and the other way around, but also that there are no hard feelings then.
Exactly. Yeah, I just wanted to put that out there because on the one hand, yes, stay in your lane, focus, but I think that there is this potential where if you kind of form these, you know, smart partnerships with other people who are more specialized in other sectors, you kind of become this group where different sectors are covered. Maybe you can share information and each person trusts and relies on the other person to provide their context and information when necessary, knowing, whilst everyone knows that everything could go to zero anytime and you don't, you know, hold it against the other person if they make a bad call at any time. Those are some interesting thoughts. Going to get into this bigger discussion how to hold a 100x in a second. Jack, would love to bring you in first though, as a significant NFT participant in the previous cycle. How are you feeling in this period of bullishness, and what's your thought on this conversation?
I love it, and I think it's given me a lot of context. I'm just gutted that I can't add any value to be a part of that chat, because I generally only invest in down only. I am exit liquidity. So, and holding on to 100x I can do. So I can definitely add value to that conversation, because what I will do is I will hold on to 100x until it is no longer 100x and is actually a net negative from where I invested into a la Moonbirds, for example. But look, I think what Legendary said about getting access or exposure to a token through, you know, the NFT or the gaming project or something else, I'm seeing that. So I'm seeing conversations across people who were active participants in the last run who did very, very well. Not me. Do not listen to a word I say. Probably don't even listen to this. But anyway, I've seen that from those people. And I think a really good example was the Bodoggos. And I do hold like 25 of those things. I haven't sold any, but just FYI, I do have exposure to that collection. But you saw Farouk, Dees and Luca sweep like 130 of them on the weekend, which literally like increased the collection by about 200% in terms of value. And their thesis, and this is one that I've heard not just for Bodoggos, but this context is almost perfect in line with what Legendary was saying, is that, look, Sol's already ripped. And we're going to see that with ETH. We're going to see that with other things as well, where people are just like, you know what, that has ripped so much that I do not know if it's going to do another 2x from here in a time frame that my degen brain will be okay with. So what can I get exposure to that may rip, so I can get more Sol and then eventually sell? And this is why they bought Bodoggos, was they were like 1 Sol at the time, and they were thinking, look, Sol's already ripped. I'm not just going to buy and hold Sol at this point. I want exposure to an NFT project that still has capability of doing a 5 or 10x. And then they go into the collections and they see something like Mad Lads at 59 Sol. And then they look at projects that they also know of, a la Bodoggos at 1 Sol, and they're just like, okay, well, does Bodoggos 3x or does Mad Lads 3x from here? And this is generally, like, when you look at the last cycle, that 100%, like, people couldn't wrap their heads around why ETH was pumping and so were NFTs. And it's because ETH had sort of already hit that pump. People had hyper attention on it, but they just didn't invest because it's still a hell of a lot of money. And even though you can get like increments of it, people just think, I want one of this thing. I want 1 ETH, 1 Bitcoin, 1 of whatever. So instead, what they do is they look at NFTs and like, okay, how do I get to where I want to get an ETH? Okay, I'm going to be a degen and just go high risk on this NFT play. And those are the calculations that people do. I think here in Deez and Farouk basically put that together. Here in Legendary just say it on the show as well in terms of the gaming aspect. I think it's something people should be aware of. Just don't look at my wallet. Don't look at what I'm doing, because they do go to zero. And that is financial advice in terms of, do not follow me. You will lose all your money.
Well, that's a very good indicator. Maybe they should follow you to do the opposite, Jack. That's one of the things that was coming to my mind as you're saying that. Maybe that would be a helpful approach. But yeah, to your point on the low cap stuff, like, yes, I take your point. I think for new projects, it's a kind of risky strategy though, right? Like I don't think that there's enough liquidity to go around for everything to pump at the same time. And yet, if you do pick one of the low ones, like I think the reason why Solana has moved a lot. I think people are doing this all-time high comparison, and they're saying, okay, well, it's got more multiples to go to the all-time high in comparison with Bitcoin, which is only a 2x to all-time high, and ETH, which is, I don't know, just over a 2x now as well. But for projects which don't have that price history, I think I would be very cautious to say, or to come to the conclusion that, yeah, it's got those many multiples in it when it hasn't had it before. So I take your point. I see the thinking there. My caution in thinking that for assets which haven't got the price history is like, we just don't know if those are going to go to those. So it's just a bit of a bigger bet, maybe.
Yeah, like, the math ain't mathin'. Like, at the end of the day, it is, you know, people are looking at Sol and the math they're doing, what you've just referred to around, okay, well, Bitcoin's already seen a huge pump. Like, Sol's definitely got more in it in terms of its all-time highs previously. They do the same with NFTs. So contextually, it does seem to be those projects that have been around before and have held those higher floors in the past. Like, Bodoggos has been at 15 Sol. So at 1 Sol, you're looking at a 15x there. So that's great context. I think that's really relevant context as well, because those brand new projects, I've been on this show before and stated that I'm just not interested in them right now for a number of reasons, but one of them being that they just don't have that price history, but they also don't have the history of the team actually sticking around long enough that they definitely aren't a rug, or are far enough away from a rug that I am confident with my high risk strategy, which is, by the way, I play with money that I can lose. Sure. I assume it's all at zero.
Good. That makes sense. That's helpful context. Let's move the conversation into this best way to hold onto a 100x trade. I think everything we've spoken about so far is kind of emblematic of where we are in the space at the moment, where everyone's just like planning, preparing. So I hope it's been a helpful conversation for people just to consider like how we're going about it. Maybe some of the stories we'll tell now will show that we have actually done it a little bit in the previous cycle in a useful way. Obviously, nothing worked out. Not all things worked out perfectly. Some of them far from it. But I think we do have some experience in that regard, and interested to hear other people's stories as well when it comes to this type of thing. So if you would like to contribute, just request, and Legendary will keep on top of it and see if we can get you up as well. So the question OSF asked over the weekend was, what's the best way to hold onto a 100x trade? What prevents you from selling at 10x, 20x, or 50x? Always impressed by people who manage it. It takes mad conviction. So Legendary, first two questions are for you. Then maybe I'll give some thoughts as well. Then we're going to go through some comments and then get into the discussion, because there's some good comments in there.
I think it takes more than conviction. I think the word mad plays an important role in that sentence as well. It definitely takes a bit of crazy to do that. And if you look, it also like depends again where you're on your journey. Like if you look at the typical bell curve, you have the people starting out who are like, fuck it, I'm all in with that position. If it does 100x, I have nothing to lose because I just gamble with a couple $100. Then you have the people on the right side who have fuck you money and they just don't mind if they lose that position. Either way, they are probably more likely to hold on to that 100x than like you are somewhere in the middle of that curve, growing your capital, and you have a lot to lose. You have a lot of upside to still make, and you want to be a bit more quote unquote conservative, because crypto and NFTs are everything but conservative with your money management. You're probably not as likely to do that. Also takes a lot of FOMO. Realistically speaking, the couple 100x's that I held were certainly degenerate to some extent, but also you had that FOMO that wanted to keep you going higher and higher. And it were also the times where as a trader, like I went against my own structure, where I said like, I'm going to take a third of the profit at this stage, going to take a bit at that stage. And according to my plan, I would have long been exited until I've got to the 100x, maybe except for like a small moonback that I'd still be holding. So there's a lot of factors coming together, but it's definitely more than conviction to me.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. So I'm sure you have more concrete examples as well. I'm going to try and give a concrete example for why I held to 100. And I think you're right. It's got something to do with, I don't know, what is it? You're just completely all in. Maybe you can feel something in the cycle. Maybe because it was so cheap that you don't care about it. There has to be something that detaches you from the reality of the situation.
That's a very good point. Like I remember for me, one of the first things was my NBA Top Shot portfolio.
Yes.
Like
the thing is with those cards, they were so cheap, right?
Exactly. It was part in the closed beta. Nobody was buying those packs. I had, and I think I still have like 0.1 or 0.2% like top collection in Top Shot, and that went up like from a couple $100 to 6 figures. And I was like, what's another 10x? I'm gonna hold it to 7 figures. Obviously, it did the complete opposite, and went down again. Similar play with Axie Infinity. I told you I was early enough to get the airdrop. The token was like at what, 20, 30, 40 cents, like sub $1 for a long while, until it go up all the way to 150 or 160. So that was quote unquote essentially free money that I got.
I mean, what was that? Is that like a 1000x or was that 100?
No, that's a 5x. From 20 cents to $1 is a 5x, and then to 150, 750x. So but that was free money, and I already did take profit on the NFTs. Like I did sell the land and everything that I was holding that gave me the exposure to the token. So you had like that dual stream of taking profits through the NFTs, but free riding the airdrop and already being hugely profitable.
Yes, I think that's a huge factor. There's a comment underneath, I think the most liked comment actually, which from pickle.eth, that said, the truth is having a good bit of capital behind you already makes it a bit easier to gamble harder. So it maybe lets you leave things in to run a little bit more. But I'm trying to think back from my perspective, the one that comes to mind, and maybe there was some other ones as well for me, but I was very, very early into VeVe. If you remember, I was in the shop of the VeVe account, which are these officially licensed NFTs of like Marvel, Disney, like they had Walt Disney stuff, they had Batman, they had Spider-Man, they had all kinds of stuff. And I was actually in the shop when that you could buy as many as you wanted. Like it got to the point in 2021 where it would be like, I mean, there was no gas wall because it was on some weird L2. So it would just be like a clicking race. So there's no gas wall, but you could basically not get one of the drops once the hype caught on. But I was in the shop before that all happened. So I bought like 25 first edition Batman ones. And there was something ludicrous, like $70 each. And this was at the time when I was working. So it was maybe a couple of grand investment. But I thought like that was a very like manageable amount. It wasn't a huge amount. And I thought, okay, that's just what I want my exposure to be. I think these are cool. I think they're going to go somewhere. And then they went from like $60, $70 to, I mean, they did the 100X to like 6K because that's the 100X, right? So they went to 6K. Then they went to 14, 15, 16, 17, 18K, which I think is, I guess, 200 something. And I didn't sell. Like, I think maybe I'd sold like 2 at like $1,000 to maybe cover my costs, which is one of the strategies that people sometimes do. But then I had so many left over. I think I had around $250,000 in Batman NFTs. And then I didn't sell at the top. And so I just held it a bit further down, kind of got wind of the fact that this wasn't going back up. And then I think I still exited at a very nice percentage, probably, yeah, it was still over 100x actually. So I was still 100x that particular trade, but it just wasn't the 200 or 300x that it could have been. But yeah, like thinking back as to why that was the case or what made me hold, maybe because I'd covered my costs and then just thought, let's go. And obviously the rest of the market was going insane at the time. And I guess you just lose all perspective, right? Like the total value of that portfolio is not immaterial to me. Like I talk about it as if it is, but I can guarantee you it's not. Like even right now, that amount of money is not immaterial. Like that is very material to me. And so ultimately it's very dumb for me to not have sold, but I guess you have to go through it to learn. And yeah, maybe you have to feel it and you get caught up in that moment. So that's my thoughts on that.
Yeah, I very, very much agree with that. And I think, you say it's a material amount, but if someone listens to you, how casually you speak about those 250K, it doesn't necessarily come across like that, which is to me like another reason that often, playing around with ETH or shitcoins or even illiquid JPEGs, like you have to do so many mental abstractions. You have a CryptoPunk. The CryptoPunk is 88 ETH, taking that police officer one as an example. It's 88 ETH. That is almost 200K. And then there's a long way from JPEG to magic internet money to US dollars, euro in your bank. So that mental abstraction from, and the lower numbers, because the 80 ETH, 15 ETH doesn't sound as much as 200K or 30K, makes it so much easier to not think about that as real money, because if it were real money, you probably wouldn't have hold on to many things like that. And another reflection based on what you said, and I'm really curious to hear from Jack as well, was the entry position. Like if you said, you've been buying them so cheap, same with my Top Shots. On the other hand, I remember when I bought my apes, which was like between 5 and 7 ETH, and I sold them at Mutant Sunday, which arguably is quote unquote only a 10x because I sold it, I think 55-ish ETH. It's only a 10x, but it's been a substantial amount of money back then to buy those 2 apes and hold on to them. So this is why I was like tracking their price daily. Whereas with you buy something for like a couple bucks and then it goes up to an insane amount. That's, I think, the amount that you enter that position for and how substantial it is for your total portfolio. Because arguably buying those apes back then was more than I should have bought. So that was actually also not smart money management, but at least made me exit my position early because it was uncomfortable with them. And there was no way in hell that I'd be holding them on to 80, 90 ETH.
I'm just wondering though, like from the way we're talking about this, what we've ended up talking about is how to exit your 100x or more or less in a reasonable way. But it sounds like what we're saying is not that hard to hold on to the 100x in the first place. Maybe that's just because we're deranged in some way.
But that's the point, right? You need to be a bit deranged to hold on for 100x, and then you need to come to your senses and exit that position. And flipping that switch from being a bit insane to being a bit more sane to realize what you've done, which is still tremendously well from the multiple that you hit, but now also being able to close the trade is almost if you're a degen, closing the trade, I would argue, is almost the more difficult part of the story than holding onto the 100x.
Absolutely. I think that makes sense. It makes me think of something which I read by Kobe actually the other day, one of the most prominent crypto traders probably of all time actually. And he was amending one of these documents that he had put out before about how he thinks about trading and moving his stack and like adjusting it. And one of the things that one of the amendments I think I read him say is that he would make is that even if something has 100x'd, that shouldn't mean, like logically, it shouldn't mean that you sell it if, for a reason, for the sole reason that it has 100x'd. So like if you have these arbitrary numbers in your head, it's like, oh, I'm going to sell it at 10x, I'm going to sell it at 50x, or I'm going to sell it at 100x. Like it doesn't actually matter, like, because the market doesn't care about how much you're up, right? Market doesn't care that you did a 6x, like good for legendary. Now we're gonna tank it. Oh, as soon as legendary's hit his 100x, now let's screw him over. Like that's not what the market is doing. So I guess it's just at each point in time, relative to the rest of the market and relative to your analysis of that particular asset, is this going to do more or is it going to do less? So I guess that kind of feeds in to what you're saying, where in the end, the decision that you take is a live one. You have to come to your senses at every point in time. You got to keep your senses at every point in time. Jack, would love to throw to you, and then also hear from Kusho. What are your thoughts?
I think for me, the context is it was the BAYC formula. It was the Bored Ape Yacht Club formula, which was, there was a time where if you held your Bored Ape, you were dropped somewhere near, basically hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of assets at all-time highs. If you sold all of those assets at their all-time highs without actually selling your Bored Ape Yacht Club. You had, the Kennel Club, which was like a 20k at one point. You had the Mutant, which was way over 100k at one point. You had the Land, which for those two tiers, because you got dropped either the Bored Ape Land, which was the closest to the center, or the Mutant Land, which was the second closest to the center. They were going for tens of thousands at the very start. And then you had the Token, which was, I think that was like over 100k as well. And you got to keep your Bored Ape. And I think people saw that math and they looked at some of the other projects, especially those quotation mark blue chips, where they had the closest ability to catch Bored Ape and still had all those assets and that formula to follow, which seemed fairly simple. And you basically did that math. So you said, look, if my Moonbird was 150k at the top and they do all those other drops and Bored Ape was at 500k at the top, am I still going to be able to bring in a considerable amount of money and still see where this thing goes and hold it at basically a zero cost? And that's, I think, what a lot of people did between Azuki, between Doodles, between Moonbirds, those big projects. If you ask me why they didn't sell when they may have minted the thing for either free or close to it, when it hit over $100,000, was because they thought that they were going to come into more than $100,000 worth of secondary, tertiary, basically tertiary assets.
Sure.
I think that's honestly that's what people have got to be very, very careful to look out for in this new run, is as money comes in again, so does legal scrutiny, and so does governments are going to pay attention again. And basically what made that house of cards fall down was the SEC attacking the token and investigating Bored Ape Yacht Club and all those projects saying, oh, well, we best not do that right now until this thing comes to an end. And I think that realistically is still a possibility in this new run. It may not it may not look exactly the same, but there will be a project that people start doing the math against with their project because they think that one's the next in line. And you've got to consider that, this whole thing is still very, very much not regulated, and just a touch of regulation regulation, a touch of scrutiny from these governments does bring those projects to a screeching halt, because at the end of the day, the founders don't want to go to prison, and they also don't want to lose all their previous money. So I think that's sort of the context I wanted to provide.
Yeah, I think that's helpful. Yeah, I mean, it seems like we're going into this meta of tokens again, though, and so I think that's maybe a helpful thing to bear in mind, because we definitely are going into that mode where people are starting to become very their expectations are increasing as to the likelihood of some kind of token drop at the same time. Definitely want to throw to Kusho now, who you've had your hand raised for a bit, and then would love to hear from NFT Stats Sam, who's just joined us. Kusho first.
Yo, so I'm going to keep it brief because of Sam. So I'm pretty sure Sam has some good stuff to share. This is the first space I'm ever on that I'm actually taking notes. I'm being like, okay, yeah, this is what you said, this is what Vincent said, this is what Jack said. And it's amazing for me. The thing I wanted to add just quickly is like more of a joke. If you guys want to exit, if you're really keen on getting out of a project, just convert how much you've made in terms of exit, convert it into Naira, that's like Nigerian currency, and you have a whole new perspective that will let you get out. Because when I hear people calling like, oh, 200K, 100K, I'm like, that's hundreds of millions of Naira in my country. And I'm like, okay, if you want to get out, just tell yourself, yo, I bought this project for $20 and now I have 100 million Naira. It's time to get out. It's definitely time to get out. So, I mean, that's just how I see it. And then if you want to get in, then you can just quantify it in terms of NFT terms. Oh, this is about the worth of like one Bored Ape. So it's not that expensive.
Yeah, I like it. Maybe, we just need to know some of the asset prices there, then, Kusho. Like, if you can provide us an asset list, know what we can get for all our Naira, then maybe that will make it real to us.
All right. So 200 million Naira, you can get a significant amount of property in Lagos. And Lagos is like one of the most expensive places in Africa. So
Lagos sounds fun. I've heard a lot about Lagos, a lot of good things about Lagos. So, okay, it's on our radar now. Now we know. The key strategy. Thanks for that, Kusho. Sam, welcome to the stage. What are your thoughts on this topic? Oh, maybe he's not available at the moment. No, he's just gone down, I think. Okay, Legendary, maybe try and get him back up if possible. I'm going to take the opportunity to provide some comments. We have some comments under OSF's tweet, which was, what's the best way to hold onto a 100x trade? What prevents you from selling at 10x or 20x or 50x? Wolf, in the comments to that tweet, said, we wear the pit vipers to dull out all of the distraction. So that's one option. If you are, I think it's a Milady holder, you can just put on some sunglasses and deal with it. Ladder selling was also an option, which I guess is you sell on the way up. That's, I think, a reasonable strategy if you are a reasonable person, which many of us don't seem to be. Ronan Hunt says, or set it and forget, come back in a few years. That would be a good way to hold on to it. But then it probably could have done the 100 and then gone back down to 0. Farouk said having 0 IQ made Legendary. Maybe that's what you were alluding to, that you probably shouldn't be too smart. Zeneca, interestingly, said, I'm sitting on a 100x right now and trying to figure out what to do about it. I think it all comes down to conviction and your bankroll and liquidity situation. A question I like to ask myself is, if I didn't own this much of it right now, would I buy back the same amount? If it's a resounding no, it's a pretty good indication to sell at least some. Legendary, what's your thought on that perspective, which we haven't touched on before?
That's a very smart take. I like it. Because realistically speaking, then the answer oftentimes will be no, right?
I think but then the basic that answer for me would be no for almost everything all the time, basically.
No. The only time that would have been different for me, and I remember that play as well, but I just had to chuckle at Farouk's 0 IQ comment, because it's true to some extent as well. Was when QuickSwap launched on Polygon. So there was very early Polygon days. Polygon was at a couple of cents. QuickSwap was a Uniswap fork with tokenomics. If you did the math and you were like, if QuickSwap will do 10% of the volume that Uniswap does, then this token price will have to go up so and so much. And I got my eyes got on QuickSwap because of Avgotchi, that OG GameFi ecosystem. that wanted to launch on ETH. Gas prices were high, migrated to Polygon, had a farming and staking pools there. So I got into Quick at $4, and Quick did run up to like at 1.4K, something like that. So did a solid 300x, an insane 300x. And then I was like, I did my like math model of, if QuickSwap does this and looking at Uniswap tokenomics, the price should be that. That was like the only time where I hit that 100x with it. It was like, no, I so much believed in my model, not because it was so good, but because my model was bullshit, because Uniswap token is not a good token, and assuming that QuickSwap will do 10% of Uniswap is also bullshit. So my model wasn't good, but my conviction in it was high. And that was the only time where I was like, I would still buy more Quick because I believe my model so much. So there would be cases where I would have answered Zenega's question with yes.
And you still would have made the wrong decision, basically.
Answered with yes, and it did go up. Like it did go up beyond the 100x.
Oh,
so
got it.
Would have done the right decision.
Interesting.
So it is a good perspective that he shared.
Interesting. Yep. I think that is one of the useful ones. I think we've discussed a variety of interesting perspectives there. Going to come back to it in just a moment. But first, I want to bring you up to date with the rest of the news that's happened in the space. We've obviously gone on this discussion for a little longer. So definitely want to hear from Marianne, who has just joined us and has their hand raised. We'll come to you in just a moment. But this is the Web3 Roundup and Creator Corner Roundup from the snapshot, which is pinned up top. This is what else has happened in the space in the last over the weekend. So first we have Free Lunch Capital announcing $2 million of USD reward for Flooring Lab LPs. We've been talking about Flooring Labs quite a bit. They're actually doing quite a lot of volume now. Free Lunch Capital is the person who bought all of those NFTs back in the day and is now incentivizing liquidity providers for his token. Number 2, Warpcast adds feature to mint NFTs directly from the social feed. That's pretty cool. So that's like the decentralized version of Twitter that they're building there. That sounds kind of fun. Next, Alien CryptoPunk receives $3 million bid from legendary punks collector Punks OTC. Next, Crypto Slam announces Slam AI, which is ChatGPT for blockchain data. Kind of want to experiment with that, see how good it is. Getting into the Creator Corner, we have the first ever NFT funded film Calarita screening at the Tallinn Film Festival. We also have William Mapan's series of 8 auctions going live with Verse today. You remember his part of the same exhibition sold very, very well just a couple of weeks ago. This is like a collection related to that one, but just in a lower size. And finally, Van Arman announces first ever 1-of-1 X series on Super Rare. It's like all of those unique editions. That sounds pretty cool as well. Legendary, that is the Web3 news, Web3 roundup and the Creator Corner news. I think we should probably go to Marianne now to hear what their thought is on the previous discussion. Marianne, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, B-Check. I'm very happy to be here. And also, I want to just say big hi to Legendary. I'm very happy to finally talk to you on Spaces. I've been out of Spaces for a while. And I'm back, and I'm happy to participate in this conversation. I would like to... The title really attracted me because when I first started in NFTs back in 2021, one of the first spaces I joined, there was a person who has been in the crypto market for a while, give his 2 cents about exactly this, how to know when to sell, how to know like if this is actually going to be 100x, if this is not going to be 100x, blah, blah, blah. So there's, but first of all, I just want to say I'm a terrible trader. Like I never trade NFTs. I try not to trade NFTs. I'm really bad at that, probably because I haven't given it enough time because I focus on other things. But I want to tell you the strategy or the technique that I heard from this person when I first started NFTs, and I just still remember it to this day. He basically said, whenever you want to buy into a project or mint into a project, if you can, get at least 3. The first one, you just sell it immediately to get your investment back. The second one, you sell it for a high profit, and the third one, you hold on to it because nobody knows what will happen to it in the future. If you can get more than that, it's perfect. But if you can get a minimum of 3, this is the perfect strategy, because you'll be able to sell one immediately, keep one and sell it for a higher profit, and hold onto one. Even if it goes to 0, you already made your investment back. And you just don't know, what if it does 1,000x, like a Bored Ape Yacht Club, for example. So this is something that's pretty interesting that I heard, and I thought I would share it in here. Thank you so much for letting me speak.
Yeah, thanks so much for that contribution. I do think that was one of the most popular strategies, at least back in the time. The only pushback, I guess I would say, is on the idea that you can definitely sell one instantly, because you hope that you can do that. It definitely, there was a period of time where it seemed like that strategy would always work, and yet I think that would be a more risky one now. But that's definitely something for people to think about as they're going through trying to construct their portfolio, trying to assess risk, particularly for projects that they are more passionate on and are more researched on and feel more confident on. I assume the more confident you are, the more you are looking to buy. I mean, sometimes 3 might be the number, but equally, why, in the same way that I was talking about before, how Kobe said, you don't necessarily need to sell at 100x as an arbitrary number. Why would 3 be the arbitrary number, right? Like, if you only if you've researched 7 projects and you think 2 of them are really, really good, and you have capital for 7, but you only really like 2 of them, then why not just buy more? Like, in the same way that everything can become arbitrary, you don't necessarily need to stop at 3. Sometimes you shouldn't go up to 3. Sometimes you shouldn't necessarily stop at 3. Legendary, any final thoughts as we bring that conversation to a close? I know we didn't necessarily go through all of the headlines today. As always, you can get all of the information in the snapshot every day. You can click through to find the additional context. We thought this would be an interesting conversation to have in full. So any final reflections, Legendary, today?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that on the 3 strategy, I think it's just the smallest number that allows you sell one to recoup investment, sell one to take profit, keep one as a moon bag. But then one thing you should keep in mind with that, if you sell the first for 3x, you didn't recoup your investment because you still would have taxes to pay on it, at least in most jurisdictions. But I did find it a very, very helpful discussion today, and it did further encourage me to continue my wallet cleanup, which will be a longer process.
Absolutely. And just a reminder, guys, we do this every single day, Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. Eastern Time, 12 p.m. GMT. And an additional reminder, we do not give financial advice. We talk about this like highly risky NFT crypto market. We don't know anything for sure. I hope some of the examples we give actually just help you from an example perspective. Like, this is one of the things that could happen, both the good examples, the bad examples. Like, they're just examples of how we've either thought about it and how things have played out. So hopefully that's been helpful, and hopefully you tune in again with us. We do this every day. That's the end of the show for today. Have a wonderful rest of the day, and I hope to see you again tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.